Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About Houses. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so today, as some of you know, the Federal Trade Commission hit Opendoor with a $62 million settlement over false advertising claims. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the details of this, and then we're going to just shift off Opendoor specifically. We're just going to talk about iBuyers, because iBuyers in general. So we're not just going to beat up on Opendoor over this, okay? Really quick, what is an iBuyer? Like, what Opendoor is an iBuyer, but what is that?
So they are an institutional buyer. They are a company that goes out and buys properties. They may or may not renovate them, and then they turn around and usually resell them on the open market to an end user or an investor for more money than what they purchased the property for. Now, the thing that I want to point out kind of right off the top is they are purchasing these properties that are not on the open market. So these properties have not been exposed to the maximum number of buyers. And then they are turning around, like I said, sometimes not doing anything or much and putting them on the open market. So by definition, these properties that are being sold are being purchased under market value in order for these institutional buyers to make a profit when they sell it to an end user.
Okay. Opendoor has agreed to pay $62 million to settle charges by the FTC, which says the company's claims that it helps people make more money by selling their house to the company rather than listing it on the open market were deceptive. So basically, they had they say we pay market value, we do all this stuff, and they have on their site, all the iBuyers do it. They show you how much money you save by selling to them, and it turns out not really the case.
No.
Werather than fight it, they agreed to pay an amount, which money would be used to basically repay people.
Right.
We'll not call them the victims. We'll just say they're going to be made whole. People who make claims potentially.
Well, they're going to be compensated. I don't know about being made whole.
Be compensated. Okay. The commission alleges that not only were Opendoor's offers lower than a home's market value, but also that the company actually asked sellers to fork out more for home repair costs that were higher than what people would typically spend on repairs in a market sale. Okay, there was one more quote in the article that literally said that effectively that people would just get more money for their house if they just listed it with an agent.
Right, and so
let's now we're going to shift off Opendoor specifically, okay? And let's just talk about iBuyers and this the idea of how this really works, and then we'll talk about looking forward, because it looks really bad going forward because of what's going on right now in the housing market.
Right.
Okay.
So I want to talk about a little bit about what you said. So the way that these offers from these iBuyers work are that they offer you so much money, and then they start deducting things. And they deduct things like repairs, to Todd's point. Now, the repairs that they deduct are not repairs that a seller would be asked to make in a normal transaction. So in a normal transaction, if you have a leaky faucet, then you'll be asked to fix that. Or, if you have something like that, or maybe the air conditioner needs to be serviced or something like that. Fine. But what these iBuyers are asking the seller to pay for is major repairs. So I want to give you an example. I had a listing not that long ago, and it was, I believe we sold it for about, give or take, 400 and change. I don't remember the exact number, but the iBuyer came back and they wanted like $40,000 or $50,000 in repairs. And my seller looked at that and laughed at him. Like, one of the repairs that they wanted is they wanted to replace all the shutters throughout the house. Now, there was nothing wrong with the shutters in the house. Okay, I understand the painting of the inside of the house, which of course a seller would never have to do under normal circumstances. And I understand the redoing the flooring in the house, which again, a seller would never have to do under normal circumstances. But in the case of the shutters, number one, the seller would never have to do under normal circumstances. And number two, there was nothing wrong with the shutters.
Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. In 3,000 or so homes you've sold, what's the typical amount you allot for repairs when the person says, "Oh, we want a bunch of stuff fixed"?
$500.
$500. Okay.
So I take that back. It's $500. So it's kind of a sliding scale depending on the price of the home. And the reason I said $500 because I was still thinking about this house that was $400 and change. So basically anything under $500,000 gets $500. Anything between $500,000 and $1 million gets about $1,000, and so on. So you kind of get the picture. So, so if it's a $5 million house, then, maybe the amount is more like $10,000. And that would be commensurate kind of with the price of the house and with the likelihood of more expensive items needing to be repaired.
Okay. Now, are you aware, because you've dealt with them, how many roughly people have to go to them and say, I want to sell my house, what will you give me for it? What's the ratio of that number versus how many people they actually accept the offer? Like they'll say, oh, you want to sell your house, we'll give you this. How many people actually end up going through with it?
As far as the iBuyers are concerned?
Yeah, the people with iBuyers.
Oh gosh, I don't know what the ratios are, but I would guess that it's probably like 50-1, because remember.
Okay, so a couple percent, 2 or 3%.
Right. So and part of the reason is because remember they're basically offering like 75 cents on the dollar.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's say your homes were $400,000 on the open market, and you would have to pay some realtor's fees and title and escrow and a bunch of other stuff. No matter what you do, you're always going to have to pay title and escrow fees.
Right.
Okay? Realtor fees are negotiable.
Right.
But most of these iBuyers, and we'll just say they're 4 to 6% realtor fees. These iBuyers, most of them charge they call it a buyer premium.
Right.
Of like 5%. So they're literally charging you the commission you would pay on the open market.
Right.
You're not getting any exposure to a bunch of people. They're just trying to skim off the people who are willing to accept their lowball offer. I mean, literally, they're just flippers, right? They're really not any different than a flipper. And then they attempt to say, we have all these repairs, and then you're just paying for their flip. Like, oh, we need to make $15,000 worth of repairs to get it up on the market, to be able to sell it. And then they use that money to flip the house. They basically put that money in their pocket. Like, the whole premise is they make money because they're making money on the flip, and they put the money in your pocket. If they pay market value and they sell it for market value, there's not going to be a lot of profit in there.
But there's not going to be any profit because there are transactional costs in and out. Okay. So if you're paying market value and you're selling at market value within a short amount of time and there's virtually no appreciation, then you're actually losing money because there are transactional costs in and out. So in order for the iBuyers to make money, they have to buy under market value, and they have to get the seller to subsidize their repairs and their costs.
Okay. Now, all flippers, though, are trying to go out there and find bargains, right? These people who are investors. However, many of them are not real estate licensees. Meaning a lot of these are just investors who then work with a real estate license. Because there's a higher standard if you're a real estate licensee.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about this. You have this FTC issue with iBuyers, where FTC is looking at iBuyers going, hey, you guys are just lowballing people and then taking the unsuspecting people willing to sell cheap, and then basically putting that equity in your pocket. That's what this company, you're overstating what you're basically saying. Hey, don't use the real estate agent. It's going to cost you all this money. Sell it to us cheap, and then we'll flip it and put the money in our pocket.
So they're overstating the cost of putting the house on the open market, and they are undervaluing the property for the purposes of purchasing it from the seller.
Okay, now
remember, when you're flipping a property, you don't make money on the sale. You actually make money on the buy. Okay,
that's right.
So
because you can't force a person to pay over market value.
Right.
And market value is market value.
Right.
You only make money based on your acquisition cost.
Exactly.
And you've done this hundreds of times, so you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now let's talk about this other thing that is potentially worse than the FTC. 50 states and their real estate divisions. When real estate divisions, true case, I have seen this, real estate licensee goes out and buys a property at the trustee sale, which you get at a substantial discount. Real estate agent takes that property, which they basically bought for cash, 20% under market value, and puts it in the MLS for market value. The house sells for market value. The real estate agent puts money in their pocket because they literally bought the house at the trustee sale. The person bought it and got a loan with a lender, with an appraiser, the whole thing. Okay? Then market values tank, and the the person that bought the house comes back and says, oh, well, I got ripped off because I just found out the agent only bought the house for $400,000. I paid $500,000 for the house. So he must have just ripped me off, even though a bank loaned on the money, there was an appraisal, the whole thing. You know what the real estate division did? They took his license. They said, wait, how could you pay $400,000 for a house and sell it a month later for $500,000? That sounds like you ripped him off. And he goes, I put it in the MLS. They had an agent. They bought the house. It was a trustee sale. That's how the trustee sale works. And I was sitting there when this happened, and the attorney for the guy he was stunned. He just couldn't believe what was happening. You have real estate divisions potentially that could look at iBuyers and go, you guys are real estate licensees. Why are you out there basically, are these people aware of how much under market value? Like, there should be a disclosure that they have to give after the transaction closes with all the fees they paid, meaning how much they acquired it for, what fees the seller paid, the homeowner, and then at the end, how much they paid and how much they got and then how much profit they made off of the seller's property. Like how much the iBuyer made. That should be a disclosure that they have to provide upon their sale back to the person so they can see that.
Well, so here's the thing. If that disclosure actually happened and if it was given to actually the end buyer, that would be a very interesting thing, because then the appraiser would look at that, and would the appraiser then value the property differently? That would be a very interesting thing. As far as going back to the seller, what's done is done. I mean, giving the seller that disclosure after the transaction closes, I'm not sure that there is any value to that.
But don't you think it's different since the buyer is a licensee? These iBuyers are not a corporation coming in and buying it like a private investor. These are licensed real estate brokers. The companies are licensed real estate brokers in all the states.
Right. And I think that is going to be something that maybe some of the real estate divisions are going to look at. And to your point, look, real estate divisions are these very scary bodies for real estate licensees.
Super scary.
Because they can take your license away and you don't get it back.
Substantial fines.
They're also able to levy substantial fines. I mean, they can take your livelihood away and take your assets away, basically, because they can fine you. So they are very scary for real estate licensees. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds going forward. And this is not... Remember, iBuyers are different than Joe Investor, okay? Because Joe Investor very likely is not a real estate licensee because he's smart enough not to be one, so that he's not subject to the real estate division. Joe Investor tends to turn properties, and he needs to make a profit on each property. While these iBuyers, look, they've got money from Wall Street, they've got all kinds of private equity and that sort of thing. So they're I kind of look at them almost as governmental bodies, in the sense that they don't necessarily have that much accountability as far as being fiscally responsible with their business.
Okay, moving forward, we're actually, today's a twofer. Today they're getting two videos. They're getting this video and they're getting our August market update, which the market is changing probably faster than I suspected it would change. It's changing pretty quickly.
It is changing quickly.
And how does this work? Flippers do very well when markets are very predictable. And when markets are unpredictable, and of course anybody flipping a house in 2020 or 2021 made money. Okay, so a lot of people came into flipping because it was a lot of money to be made. But what is this like when the market starts turning, when you have properties on the market a long time, when you have prices starting to fall? How is that for a flipper? Because you have this timeline where they have to maybe do repairs and stuff like that, put on the market, make money, and then the longer it takes, the more the market's falling. And how is that? Like, what does this look like potentially, long term?
Well, I think flipping is still possible. I'm going to start with that.
Okay, sure.
Flipping is still possible. I think they're going to have to be smarter, wiser, have better margins, have really sharpen their pencils when it comes to any improvements or repairs that they're going to make. Look, people who are good at doing flips, they make money no matter what the market's doing. Okay, maybe they make more money when the market is appreciating, and they make less money when the market is on a downturn. But they make money either way because they're good at what they do. But it is not for everybody. So a lot more people who were maybe more less diligent, well, I'll kind of put it that way, maybe they were less diligent, maybe they were less knowledgeable, could make money over the last couple of years. But now those people are either losing money or they're out of the game altogether. And who's left are the people who are really good at what they do, which means that this contraction in the number of flippers is not necessarily a bad thing. Nope. Because now you've got the people who are really good at it who are still going to stay in the game because they've been here for a long time and they know what they're doing. Okay,
we did a video, I think a year or two ago. We talked about iBuyers, and we literally said that the next big downturn in the housing market would probably take a couple of them out.
Right. And
you can go back and find that. You can just, if you probably type in iBuyer in the channel, you can probably find the video.
It'll be interesting to see whether this change in the market takes them down or whether they pivot as far as their business model.
To some other thing.
Yes, to some other thing, some other way of making money. So okay. I don't necessarily know that we're going to lose them altogether. So I don't expect, big companies like Opendoor to close their doors. I do expect that they will pivot and find other ways to make money.
Okay. Anyway, so the moral of the story is real estate is pretty efficient. Mm-hmm. And when you start a company to say you're going to save money for the consumer by saving all those super expensive real estate commission fees that they have to pay, and then right up front you're charging them a buyer fee, which is basically the same as the commission, mm-hmm. and then all these other fees which are more than you would actually pay, mm-hmm. right? And you for some reason you're only really getting a couple percent of the people who come to you want to sell. If 98% of the people are saying no thanks, I don't want that offer, then they're going the traditional route. Mm-hmm. Okay, then I think there's something wrong. Personally, there's something wrong with that model. If you don't believe me, go find an iBuyer that's traded on the public markets and go look at what they IPO'd at and then go look at their current stock price and see what the market thinks about the business model. This real estate is very efficient. The current system is very efficient. We were told in 95 or 6, when the internet happened, that within 10 years there would be no need for real estate agents. And back then, ready for this, 90 to 95, only 75% of homes were listed in an MLS. 25% of homes were off. And they said, those 75%, they'll be gone. And guess what now? 95% of all homes are sold on an MLS. The internet actually made the MLSs and the real estate agents more powerful. Mm-hmm. And everyone has missed that. And remember, real estate commissions are negotiable. They're very competitive. And people believe they get a lot of value out of it. And apparently the FTC is sort of onto this. And I think this potentially is the start of a lot of scrutiny under these iBuyer companies. And then potentially, I think states will start having, since they are licensees, some more disclosures and things. And I like the idea of they would have to provide all this information when they sell it to that next appraiser to determine the actual value. Right.
I think that's really important. And the reason I say that is because, let me give you an example. Let's say that I sell my house for $500,000 to an iBuyer. Okay? And that's what shows up in the tax record. What doesn't show up in the tax record are all the fees and charges that company charged me. So let's say that I sold it for $500,000, but I paid them $70,000 in repairs and other fees and whatnot. So essentially, I actually sold a house for $430,000. That's not what an appraiser sees. An appraiser sees that I sold a house for $500,000. So that's really the big issue that I have with it.
This is a huge issue, and I'm going to break this down and make it very simple. You just sold your house. We'll just use a lower number, $300,000. However, you paid, let's say, $50,000 in fees. Mm-hmm. Okay? You paid all these fees as far as a repair fee and a buyer fee and yada yada. So you don't get $300,000, you get $250,000. But what shows up in the tax record only is the price. You don't get these reductions. Okay. The next person that buys it says, oh, look, I can look in the tax record because I can't look at the MLS and see that they paid this, they paid $300,000 for the house. Wow. And then they can literally turn around and sell the house for $300,000 and make money on it because they charged fees to the buyer, which don't show up. It's almost that the tax record value is not a fair representation of the actual value that the buyer paid for the house, which is a huge problem. I think it's almost unethical.
Well, I think so I'm going to go one step further and say that it's fraudulent.
It's fraudulent.
Because here's the thing. If the end user is getting a loan, that appraiser uses that information as part of valuing the property. And if that number is inaccurate, then that appraiser provides an inaccurate appraisal, which causes the lender to make a loan against an incorrect appraisal. So that's why I think it's fraudulent.
Let me put this in different terms. I'm selling my house. My buddy comes to me and says, hey, I want to buy your house for $250,000. I go, great. He goes like this, I can't actually, we need to tell them I paid $300,000. Well, why? Well, because I'm going to flip it. And I'm going to flip it for $300,000, but I can't flip it for $300,000 if I actually paid you $250,000. So what I'm going to do is we're going to write up a purchase agreement where I pay you $300,000, but you give me back $50,000 in fees. We record that, $300,000, but I really only pay you $250,000 because you're kicking back $50,000 in fees. I can flip the house and get rid of any flipping rules. In a normal market, what is recorded in the MLS, everyone can see the commissions, and realtors have to put in the costs of any loan seller paid costs.
So they're called seller concessions or seller contributions.
So
we can see that.
So if you did that, if you sold your house for $300,000 and you paid commissions, right, and then you also paid a bunch of seller's fees, that would show up in the MLS. The appraisers could see that. With these private sales, which are effectively private sales, none of that's disclosed. Nobody gets to see that. So you look at the house that sold for $300,000 on the open market with some concessions, and then you have the private sale at $300,000 with $50,000 in concessions, and then they sell the house for $300,000 again. It looks like an even sale, and it wasn't.
Right. So just kind of keep that in mind as we kind of go through all of this going forward with the flippers, with the iBuyers, with that sort of thing. Keep in mind that the numbers that are reflected in the public records may not always be a true reflection of the transaction.
Right. If I was a member on the real estate commission, or I worked for if I was someone in state government, I would be very much looking at the practices of private sale buyers who then report what they paid for the house when they actually have all these kickbacks that come out and go right back to them that do not represent a true market value of the purchase of the house.
A good way to solve that is actually a very simple disclosure, which is if you have flipped the property within the last 12 months, provide the final settlement statement from that sale.
Okay.
Boom. And it's done. And everything shows up on that final settlement statement, and then there's transparency.
All right. If you made it to the end of this very long video, we had a lot of information we wanted to get out. It was just all triggered by this thing that just happened because we talked about this 2 years ago. We exposed all of the problems with the iBuyers, and we pointed out all the faults, the things we did not believe they solved the problem, and they're now starting to come to light. We're starting to see these things, and the other things we've mentioned are also things we see that are getting ready to come to light.
Right. So we appreciate you watching the video. Please like the video, share the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave us a note. If you sold to an iBuyer, or if you purchased from an iBuyer or from a flipper, we want to know what your experience was like. Were you happy with it? Did you have seller's remorse? If you purchased Did you get a good product? How did that turn out for you? We want to know what your experience was, good or bad.
Yeah, or if you gave them your house and they gave you an offer and you thought the offer was terrible,
right?
Let us know. Like, how bad was it? We would like to know that.
Yeah, it's always interesting to us to know what your experience is out there. So thank you for watching. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like the video, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.